Hi, my name is Steve Rahi. I am a cloud solutions architect focused on management technologies. Today's discussion continues our survey of the Intune Suite series of components. This session will focus on Enterprise App Management, and the agenda here will be very similar to all of ours, right? We'll talk about what it is, why we care about it, look at the Enterprise App Management in the console, and wrap up with some troubleshooting tips and tricks. So in terms of what is Enterprise App Management, what is it, right? Enterprise App Management is a way to be able to discover and deploy applications in your environment without actually having to do all of the work yourself, right? It is a catalog of apps that are curated and maintained by Microsoft that is an ongoing, growing list of apps that you can leverage in your enterprise, right? The Enterprise App Management capabilities are based on the Win32 app deployment capability in Intune. So if you do select an app from the Enterprise App Management catalog, it will be deployed through the Win32 app configuration option that exists in Intune. More about that shortly as you see some detail. So why do we care about Enterprise App Management? Put simply, streamlining app management is really helpful for most organizations, and the Enterprise App Management actually does a really good job of helping you do so because the apps that are in the catalog are already pre-configured for your environment or for deployment in environments and so forth. Also, in the Enterprise App Management catalog, you will find apps that publish in the Enterprise App Management catalog, there will be updates to apps that are published that you can then deploy across your environment. So this will come up a couple of times. I'll just mention it here. When I delivered this session elsewhere, a question was asked, okay, what about self-updating apps? Are there apps in the catalog that are self-updating? And the answer is yes, there are, right? That depends on the vendor. And those updates or those apps will self-update. And Intune handles that by just looking for a minimum version number to make sure that that app is there, and then will report the version that is actually on the machine as you go through. So in that case, you may not have to do the app update yourself. The vendor and the vendor URLs and requirements and so forth will be responsible. Or if the vendor allows it, you can turn it off on the command line, which gets into another brief area. Can you customize what's in the catalog, right? If you have an app that is configured to self-update and you don't want that to happen, can you change that? And the answer is yes, right? You absolutely can. And you'll hear me talk about that a couple of times. If the app is one that does not self-update and the vendor just publishes new versions, then you will find that those new versions are available in the Enterprise App Management catalog, so you can pick them and just deploy them out to your environment, right? And again, more on that, probably hear me say it a couple of times as we go along. Here's another thing, right? Enterprise App Management is part of the Intune Suite. If you're licensed for the Intune Suite, then you have access to the Enterprise App Management catalog. You may or may not wish to use it. So one thing, though, is that, as maybe you're, trying to figure out the best approach to do certain things and how to structure your own deployments and options and so forth, if you do have Intune Suite, then you have a huge list of apps that are available to you in the Enterprise App Management catalog that you can look at, you can learn from, you can see the example of how to do configurations as we have, right? We, Microsoft, have built all of these, vetted all of these to be able to be deployed across your enterprise. So take that opportunity, learn by our example. What are the requirements? Well, of course, you need to be Intune enrolled. This is something Windows targeted, and you do need the appropriate licensing. So in this case, Intune Suite, or as you'll see in the wrap-up part, you can actually purchase this standalone if you'd like to, but the licensing needs to be there to be able to use it. All right, so how does this work? Usually I would have a diagram or something in this page to kind of show a little bit of how the component does its thing. In this case, it's just a Win32 app. And I have a separate session on Win32 apps where I dig into the detail of that. In this case, Intune, I'm going to talk about Intune will predefine a number of things for you. It will predefine the install and the uninstall command line. Again, talk about a learning opportunity to see how we craft that and that you can craft that. Sometimes that's a little bit of a sticky area for people as they're first grappling with Win32 apps, whether that be in Intune or Config Manager, frankly. And you can see how we do it here. We also will list out a time required to install the app. Always a best practice to list out an install time, right? In case the install is faulty and exceeds that time for whatever reason, then we'll go ahead and cancel it, right? We will give you the option, or we will define the option as to whether the app can be uninstalled by the end user. We will define the installation and device restart behavior, any return codes that are in addition to what the default are, we will define. We will define whether the app should be installed for the system or the user. We will put in the appropriate detection rules. Detection rules is also a great learning opportunity to see how different things can be configured. Requirements. We will put in any requirements that are in place. Or if you wanted to change it for your environment, I had a question from one of the customers that I delivered this to. They wanted maybe to specify that the minimum OS was something higher than what the app actually required. So in their enterprise, maybe they wanted Windows 11 only to receive certain applications and be the minimum OS for that. And even though it could go on Windows 10, right? Certainly that's an option to you. You'll hear me again talk about customizing the app for your own environment in more as we go through. I will just say that the Enterprise AppManagement catalog is essentially a one-way push to you. Any changes you make are not absorbed back into the service. They are your own, right? So don't worry about any changes you make impacting other people. They won't. The only thing you have to worry about making changes is that you validate that the changes are going to give you the result that you want. All right, so that said, I'm going to move into the configuring demo. There's really not a in action so much demo. I'm not deploying this. Again, I have my Win32 session where I talk about how to configure Win32 apps, how to deploy Win32 apps, and so forth. So what I want to do here is just walk you through and show you where this is in Intune and some of the characteristics of it and so forth. Right? So here's Intune, and I'm going to go to Apps. And under Apps, I'm just going to select Windows to keep the view a little bit more filtered, and I'm going to Add. So if I wait and select the app type, you will see at the very bottom, there's the Enterprise App Catalog. So I'm going to add that, and then hit Select. And then from there, I'm going to need to define what app I want. Could be one app, could be multiple apps, right? But as this list builds, I'm just going to pick one at random. As this list builds, you're going to see a good number of apps that are in the catalog. Whenever we first introduced the catalog, we documented that we would have at least 100 apps in here. I counted, I don't know, maybe a week ago whenever I was getting ready for the session, week and a half, whatever, and I counted a little bit over 450 apps that are in the catalog now, right? And you can pick and choose whatever you like. I'll just pick one at random. Let's just pick this one. I don't know. Can I do a, let's just click next on that. So I can only pick one at a time, it looks like. So here we go. Hit select. And when I do that, I get all of the detail from this particular app. So a description, who the publisher is, the app version. Here's if I want to select a category, I could go ahead and do that. It's not done for you. Whether you want to show the app in the company portal, again, up to you. Other things down here are not filled in because they are up to you, right? Click next, and now we have our install command line, and we have our uninstall command line. So this might proactively answer a question for you that I will cover again in a minute, and that is, I mentioned all of this app deployment is done through Win32 App Engine, and that's true. And so what types of apps can actually be supported in that case, right? And the answer is MSIs and executables. Those are the two apps that you can deploy. And this is an example of an MSI. You see us calling MSI exec, passing in the MSI with the right switches and so forth. Here's the uninstall command. Here we specify the installation time, 60 minutes. Tested, vetted, that's what we put on there. If it takes longer than that, that's probably unexpected, so be careful. Don't shorten this, probably, right? Allow available uninstall, yes or no, right? Can the user uninstall? The install behavior is going to be for system, and then determine behavior based on return codes. Here's a list of the return codes. Typically, 0 and 3010 are the ones that I most commonly see. That might be my config manager knowledge coming back. I don't know if 1618 and 1707 are commonly in Win32 apps. I might break out of this in a minute and go check another Win32 app that I built just to see what the return codes by default were there. I'll do that. Hopefully, I'll remember to do that in a minute. Just out of curiosity, right? And then here's the architecture required. So this is all pre-filled 64-bit, Windows 10, 1607. If you wanted to change this and specify a different minimum operating system that you have in your environment, you can. If you want to add other requirements based on your environment, you can down here as well. And then you will see that we have pre-configured our detection. There's 2 file options, right? And then there's 1 registry option. So this is interesting because it looks like it's the same thing to me. I'm just curious. Again, I picked this at random, so I'm going to go look at this for a minute and see what's different about it. So this is an exe file path. Okay, so size and bytes. Okay, let's go look at the other one. And so, yeah, string version equals. Okay, so that is different. It's just the path that was the same. Okay, cool. And then here's a registry entry you can do. Again, even if you don't use the Enterprise App Management Catalog, it's a fantastic learning tool if you're going to start doing your own Win32 apps. And likely that will be a path you want to pursue if you're deploying things in Intune. And then here, finally, we're done. We can decide what we do for deployment in terms of scope tags, and then our assignments just like normal, and all of this you have to fill in, and off we go. All right, so I'm going to actually leave the Enterprise App Catalog because that's really one example. You can go pick any of them and you'll see what's unique to that one. But I am curious to go and look at this one, right? This is one that I created. This isn't in the app catalog, but it's one I created. I'm curious on the return codes. So let's go look at that. Go under File and Properties, and then go look at return. Do we have return codes? Here we go. Yeah, well, there we go. 13, okay, 1707 and 1641. So those are in 1618. So I didn't actually specify those. Those are part of the system these days. And so that's cool, right? I had 0 and 3010 burned into my memory, again, from my config manager past, and knowing that they were carried forward here. Looks like these are carried forward as well, which is cool, right? All right. So that, folks, is really it. I mean, that's showing you the Enterprise App Management Catalog. There are some things that you should be aware of when using the Enterprise App Management Catalog. So in terms of troubleshooting, worthy for a moment of discussion, the apps that are in the Enterprise App Management Catalog are all deployed as Win32 apps, as I've mentioned a couple of times. Since they are deployed as Win32 apps, they will be installed exclusively by the Intune Management extension. So let's talk about that just for a minute. When you think about Intune, it is common to think about the management protocol, so to speak, being MDM, right? And it is. For the vast majority of things that you do in Intune, it will be delivered by MDM. So when we talk about MDM in our documentation, for example, when you think about synchronization times and how often does a device check in, and does the device check in out of sequence, out of the 8-hour sequence more frequently in some cases? And the answer is yes, yes, yes to all of that, right? That is all MDM centric. That has nothing to do, at least right now, I have a sense that maybe there'll be some changes going forward, but at least at the time of this recording, the Intune Management Extension is totally separate from MDM in terms of the way it operates, right? Intune Management Extension is a service that is installed on all Intune managed Windows devices. You can see it looking in the service list. When I get to the machine here to show it, I will try to remember to do that. And Intune Management Extension is its own entity, right? It does its own policy, sync, schedule, and so forth. So if you push down a Win32 app, and there are other things that actually happen through Intune Management Extension, like PowerShell script execution or enhanced endpoint analytics, specifically device query, right, and other things. So when you are sending something through Intune Management Extension, there is, by default, a 2-hour polling cycle, right? Every 2 hours, Intune Management Extension will poll. If you go into the Settings app or the Intune portal or whatever and select Sync, that has nothing to do with Intune Management Extension. Again, as of this recording anyway, right? And so if you need to restart or to force an Intune Management Extension sync, then you can do that by restarting the service, right? Rebooting the machine obviously does the same thing. But outside of that, it's going to be on its own schedule every 2 hours. So last thing I'll say about this, I feel like I'm getting a bit into the weeds, right? Because of the mechanisms that are in place with MDM, the 8-hour check-in window is not what you don't have to wait typically for the 8-hour check-in window for something to be received by the Intune managed device. The 8-hour check-in window is what I call a fail-safe sync, but in most cases, if you deploy an app or a configuration as required to a device through MDM, then it's going to get there within minutes, right? If you tested in your lab, you've probably seen that. Does that mean that you were just lucky in terms of when you did it and the sync was coming up anyway? No. There's a mechanism in place to notify the device, hey, something's changed for you, check in and get the configuration now, right? So enough about that. There is no equivalent for Intune Management Extension. So that's why I mentioned it's a 2-hour schedule, or if you need to, for lab testing, force it to happen sooner, you can go ahead and restart the service to make that happen, right? Intune Admin Center, right? The console is where you're going to see all of the information about the app reflected back in terms of install status and so forth. Pretty par for the course. And the choice of Intune Management Extension is me kind of digging a little bit deeper. To the typical admin, probably doesn't matter. It's seamless to you. Intune's going to know how to do things and so forth. Intune Management Extension also comes with logs. I'm going to show you the logs and where you can access them in a minute, but that's really awesome, especially for those coming from Config Manager who are accustomed to looking at logs. Yeah, we document all of what's going on in the background when we process things with Intune Management Extension. Show that to you in a minute. Intune Management Extension also has antivirus considerations you need to have in your mind. I realize I don't have the VM pulled up. Stand by. I will pause and I'll pull it. Okay, so I have my VM running in front of me. So first of all, so I don't forget, let me show you the Intune Management Extension, which is a service on the device and so forth, right? So it's under Microsoft and Intune Management Extension right there, right? So if you needed to force a sync, just restart the service, you should be good. I was mentioning antivirus considerations. You do need to make sure that the Intune Management Extension folder is excluded, kind of in the same way in Config Manager, we would exclude the logs folder, same kind of deal, right? So, yeah, here we go. Program data and Intune Management Extension. And here's logs, right? So here are all of the various logs that will be at play as you're doing different things with the Intune Management Extension. right? And which log you are interested in is depending on what action you're taking and so forth. But here they all are. I'm not going to dig into them in great detail, but they are here for your pleasure, reading and troubleshooting what's going on the device whenever you're using it to deploy Win32 apps or with the Enterprise App Management Catalog, right? Okay. Still more tips and tricks. Customizing the apps. Can you customize the apps? The answer, as I mentioned, is yes, you can. Right? We'll talk about this again in frequently asked questions here in a second. The caveat is the app as presented in the App Management Catalog, we will guarantee is configured correctly. If you go modify it, you can, but then you take responsibility for whether it works or not, right? So be careful with that. What about, I did the customize existing apps first. Sorry. Can you introduce custom apps into the catalog? There is a process that you can use to do that, right? It's going to be through the feedback hub in the portal. And I suppose if you have a custom app in your environment that you wanted up there, that you could ask for it. I doubt you want to, because then the app catalog would be making that available to everyone, right? But if there more likely is a commercial app that you would like in the catalog that's not there right now, there is a process to request it. There's also a process to upvote the request that other people have made for apps to be included in the app catalog. We've talked about app updates, right? There are some apps that will self-update. And then if they do, then your network will have to be configured to allow them to self-update the right endpoints available and so forth if you want to allow for that. There are some apps that won't self-update, but we will publish updates to the Enterprise App Management Catalog when updates become available, and then you will just deploy those across your environment like normal, right? Okay, so frequently asked questions, and we'll move through some of these real quick because some of them are repeats of what we've already talked about. How can a request be made to add an application to the Enterprise App Catalog? The answer is through the Microsoft Feedback Portal. That's how you can do that, right? What is the source location from which devices are downloading the app content? Well, it's going to be the Intune storage in the cloud, right? So just like Config Manager has distribution points, Intune has an internal source for storing data, and that's where the clients will pull from when downloading the app content, unless you have delivery optimization turned on. And then delivery optimization, once it starts to roll across your environment, we will help optimize your usage of the WAN by providing access to it from other clients, right? Is Microsoft providing security around any of the content provided in the catalog? The answer is no. That's up to the vendor and so forth that creates the app. We're just providing the packaged version of the app. All right, what app installer types are in the Enterprise App Catalog? Talked about that. It's MSI and EXEs, right? How will Microsoft detect if an application from the Enterprise App Catalog is in use? Short answer is we won't, right? So right now in Intune, that question largely probably comes either from just enterprise experience or from using Config Manager, where we do have the ability to detect if an application is in use before we take action on it. And right now there is no equivalent to that in Intune. I can think of some creative ways that you might be able to deal with that, right? But when it comes to the Enterprise Management App Catalog and what we provide there, no, there's no way that we can do that right now. What is the SLA for when an app update is available in the catalog? We don't have an SLA, right? That's up to the vendor. How many applications are in the catalog? When we first introduced, it was documented to be 100. As I mentioned, I counted a week to 10 days ago, and there were over 450 in the catalog. How can working with the applications in the Enterprise App Catalog be automated? Well, for any automation that you want to do against Intune, we have Graph API, and certainly you can apply automation to Enterprise App Catalog with Graph API. Will Enterprise catalog apps automatically update to a new version when a new version is available in the Enterprise App Catalog? And the answer is no, right? So already split the hair between if the vendor supports self-updating of the app, then that's not going to come from the Enterprise App Catalog. If a new version does show up in the Enterprise App Catalog, you will need to deploy it across your environment like you did the first time. Can license applications be obtained from the catalog? Absolutely, right? It's your responsibility to make sure that you have the appropriate license before you pull it down. But yeah, there are licensed applications in the catalog. Can Enterprise App Management be purchased standalone? Absolutely yes, right? I would encourage you to consider purchasing the entire Intune suite, but if you just want this one component, you can do that, right? Can Enterprise App Management be leveraged with Configuration Manager? No, this is something delivered via Intune. It can be used with devices that are co-managed, right? No problem with that, but it is delivered purely from the Intune side. Does Enterprise App Management use WinGet? The answer is no. Enterprise App Management uses Intune Management Extension to do the install, as we've mentioned. How is the Enterprise App Catalog app updated, right? So for this one, you would want to make sure you configure whatever experience is desired for uninstalling the previous version of the app, and then however the behavior of the app upgrade is controlled by the vendor will ultimately drive the decision. What should be done if after several hours the app continues to show that it isn't ready and that the requested content is still being prepared? Well, in that case, if the app content hasn't synced, then delete the app from your environment and try again. Then finally, is there an Intune, this keeps popping up. Is there an Intune report available to view details about the Enterprise App Catalog apps for a specific device? The answer there is absolutely, so that you can kind of troubleshoot and see what's going on in your environment. So folks, that's it for the Enterprise App Management Catalog. A very useful piece. Take a look at it, right? It's not earth-shifting in terms of a new way to deploy apps, because Win32 deployment has been around for a while. But it is a great convenience for you if there's apps in the catalog that would be advantageous for you to be able to shortcut and just deploy out using the pre-canned, if you will, configurations that we have, or to learn from. Definitely take a look. So that's it for this one. We'll put a bookmark here and continue next time.